Take your time.
Gail was the mum that I didn't have because my mum passed away 4 years ago. And Gail's never been anything but good and kind to me. And Ian and Heather were some of the best people I've ever met. They never did anything wrong to me, and I'm so devastated about what's happened.
Can you tell us
and the loss to the community and to the families and to my own children who've lost their...
Nothing goes right.
Tim's news explosion. 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 Hello, everybody, and welcome to this week's Tim's News Explosion on this Monday, the 7th of July, 2025. We are live on the Wilms Front YouTube channel, the Wilms Front Rumble channel, and on my X account. Hello to everyone in the live chat. It is 8:30 p.m. here in Melbourne, Victoria, where the breaking news today, a jury after a week of deliberations has found Erin Patterson
Guilty!
of lacing a beef Wellington with death cap mushrooms to murder her in-laws, Don and Gail Patterson, and Gail's sister Heather Wilkinson, and guilty of attempting to murder Ian Wilkinson. At the verdict was read out at the Latrobe Valley Supreme Court in Morwell. So this guilty verdict, we can now say that she is a convicted triple murderer. She has been found guilty in a court of law. This is 2 years after the lunch, July 2023. It was amazing scenes in the packed public gallery with the world's media assembled outside. Erin Patterson, she didn't break down crying like she did in that interview with the media outside her home when the story first broke. She just sat in the dock, blinking. That's all that she did, and looking directly at the jury. So the guilty verdict ends the 47-day trial, which included 8 days of Mrs. Patterson taking the stand, which I thought was absolutely extraordinary because she basically admitted, both under examination from her own defense barristers and cross-examined by the prosecution, admitted to all of her lies. That so it was. She said that the way that she lured them into the lunch, she invited her estranged husband Simon Patterson, though he declined. She was also accused of attempting to murder him with death cap mushrooms, but the prosecution dropped that before the trial began. So Simon Patterson and the sole survivor, Ian Wilkinson, weren't at the court today for the verdict. So the jury, they deliberated for 7 days, and a lot of people thought that as time went on, this would mean that a not guilty or hung jury was more likely. Though the judge did give them 3 days of instructions to the jury. Now, they were sequestered in a hotel room, basically cut off from the outside world, television, internet, friends and family. I wonder if they I'm speculating if they took a few extra days to deliberate so they could, stay in the hotel for a few extra days, but it has to be a unanimous verdict, and it was. I mean, it only would have taken me an hour, I mean, to come up with the
Guilty, 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 guilty!
verdict. So obviously they had to be a jury. They probably went through all of the evidence, and we're now a lot of the evidence that they saw is now being released to the public. So we're getting CCTV footage from when she discharged herself from the hospital and when they went to buy some food at a service station. And we're also seeing the police photographs of the leftover beef Wellington and the mushroom dehydrator. So she originally lied to police and said she didn't own a food dehydrator and she got the mushrooms from the Woolworths and the Asian grocer. So sent the Victorian Health Department on a wild goose chase to the eastern suburbs of Melbourne. Then she later admitted that she rummaged for mushrooms. She developed a fascination with fungi during lockdown and said this was all a tragic accident. And also, she looked up on her computer the location of death cap mushrooms. It pinged there. So she lured them there, saying that she wanted to make an announcement. And she told them she'd been diagnosed with ovarian cancer. Uh, but she said that she actually was gathered them there to tell them that she wanted to have gastric band surgery, but she was too embarrassed to tell them she had ovarian cancer. Although there was no evidence of her trying to get gastric band surgery, she claimed that she didn't get seriously ill because she ate chocolate cake afterwards. Apparently, that was the the antidote. Andrew Wilson says she ate up all the court's time with this ridiculous matter. Well, she ate up all the court's time by murdering her in laws in the first place. So, Cat B says, hath have no fury like a woman scorned. Though the prosecution, they didn't suggest a motive. They said they didn't need to. So there was talk of child support not being properly paid by Simon Patterson. She bitched about her in-laws on social media. Now, I think there's of course there's a segment of Australia who still think that she's innocent, which is how I mean, how did it happen then? Who done it really? And so this was a case where justice was served in Victoria. I mean, Victoria Police and the Director of Public Prosecution, they had spent a lot of Victorian taxpayers' money on this case. So if it had been not guilty or a hung jury, the prosecution, they were very methodical and thorough with the evidence. And now that the guilty verdict, she now is a convicted murderer, we can now all say what we all suspected right at the beginning, that she poisoned her in-laws. And the TV networks now in Australia, obviously, I saw 9 News tonight, Tom Steinford presented 9 News from outside the Morwell court. Nathan Swindon says her sentence should be eating death caps. Well, we can get to our next story. There's a suggestion that she should serve one last meal. Nathan doesn't like my purple shirt. I thought something different. Jackie Weaver should star in a new drama, The Poison Toadstool, One Middle-Aged Journey to the Heart of Evil. Jackie Weaver may be too old now to play Erin Patterson. But yeah, I'm not sure they could all the TV networks could probably make a story. It's not like there's the rights to the story. Nine News, they've already got a documentary on their Nine Now streaming service. In fact, last week at Channel 10's MasterChef Australia, they did a challenge for the contestants, a new twist on a beef Wellington, and all the commenters on social media were saying, "Oh, didn't Erin Patterson already do this? Maybe Channel 10's just desperate for ratings since their 10 News Plus has actually led to minus ratings, as in less people are watching 10 News Plus than watched the show it replaced, The Project." No, not the shirt, the purple thing next to people's name in the YouTube chat. Yeah, I've got no idea why that's there in the chat. I just noticed that it's not showing up here on the. So it says, I think it just sort of ranks your comments. I'm not sure. Yeah, what on earth it is there. That's something new that I've seen. So it has 1, 2, 1, 2. Yeah, I'm not too sure. That's I haven't seen that before. I thought initially the commenters were putting that there themselves. Now, the Erin Patterson guilty verdict caps off a sickening week in Victoria. Last Tuesday, another pedophile, we have to say alleged, was exposed working in childcare. So this is the alleged evil grub. So Joshua Dale Brown, it's quite unprecedented for the government and the police to release the name of an alleged child sex offender, but because basically at the press conference, the acting chief health officer, Dr. Christian McGrath, he was there because they had to ask 1,200 parents to have their children tested for STIs. Now, we had the at the press conference the announcement of the charges. So he's accused Joshua Dale Brown of abusing 8 babies and toddlers. So, and it's absolutely fucked when you go through the charges here. So sexual penetration of a child under 12, attempted sexual penetration of a child under 12, the same charges for a child under 16, produce child abuse material through a carriage service to transmit child abuse material, possess child abuse material for use through a carriage service, recklessly contaminates goods to cause alarm and anxiety. So that is relation to he allegedly put his bodily fluids into the food that he was feeding the children. Absolutely sick. Use carriage service to offend, use carriage service to cause child abuse material to transmitted to self. So 70 charges in total. So the charges relate to 8 victims between April 2022 and January 2023. So the 8 victims all relate to a childcare centre in Point Cook. So this is the Victoria Police statement here. And in fact, the Victorian government, they set up a dedicated website and also a hotline as well. And at the same time as the press conference last Tuesday, they they sent out these mass text messages. So this is the current list here. So the childcare centre where the 8 victims were identified is Creative Gardens Point Cook, and the way they identified the victims was not through a complaint through the childcare centre itself. Is that they arrested Joshua Dale Brown based on a child abuse catch that detectives had located online, and were able to identify the victims through the images that he had on his computer. And it was actually the arrest of an associate of his, another alleged pedophile, Michael Simon Wilson. There he is, there, 36 years old. And he's actually a father himself. So he has been charged with child abuse material, raping a teenage boy in Coburg in April, and bestiality. So absolutely fucked is all that you can describe it as. Now, they will both appear at the Melbourne Magistrates Court on the same day in September. They're both remanded in custody, and so they should be. And now there has been no shortage of suggestive, creative punishments for these two alleged pedophiles, because most likely they will spend the rest of their life in prison, like the other childcare pedophile worker, Ashley Paul Griffith, in 2024, pleaded guilty to more than 300 charges of child abuse against 69 children in childcare centres in Brisbane and Italy over almost 2 decades. So he was sentenced to life in prison and a non-parole period of 27 years. Let me know in the comments and live chat what you think would be the appropriate punishment for these pedophiles. And now there has been massive fallout, political fallout, and also a reckoning in the childcare industry, given that, well, the Albanese government, he made centre his campaign cheap and affordable childcare. He promised 3 days universal childcare, what he calls early childhood education. And so the federal government, they fund childcare up to 14 billion per year. So 70% of the $20 billion sector. Now, the ABC, who did a Four Corners episode on child abuse in childcare centres, claim it's the for-profit nature of it. They say that if you fix up this, then that will go a long way. But it's not good for business if a pedophile is abusing children at one of your centres. And now there's also been talk of banning men from working in childcare centres. There was one provider that has banned them from toilet, changing nappies, and sleeping quarters. And now it doesn't seem that the politicians are going to be banning men from working in childcare centres. They're 2 to 4% of the workforce. Now, it would eliminate I guess, the risk of sexual abuse, but there would still, because, well, we've just covered Erin Patterson. Women tend to carry out the more sadistic and cruel abuse. So we need to think about childcare as an industry. This is unless we reconsider the fact that, and I don't want to victim blame the parents here, but vigilance is a two-way street. And now there's some people who say, parents who say that, oh, they had a funny feeling about Josh. Some say that they didn't suspect a thing. I saw that the Noticer published a story about a father who didn't report a Joshua Dale Brown because he feared being called homophobic because he claims that I would try and interact with Josh when I dropped off my son and chat, and he'd always turn his head and never look me in the eye. It was strange. He acted shady, look away or at the floor, and my son never wanted to go to him, and he would run to the other educators. I spoke to my wife about it and said something is not right here, but I worried if I followed up, I'd be that guy labeled homophobic, which I'm not. I had no proof, and what could I say? He wears skin-tight skinny jeans and leather boots with 1-inch heels, and he looks like he's going clubbing to work. I didn't want to be that person. He was allowed to wear that to work. That doesn't seem appropriate. I mean, a teacher, I wouldn't think would wear those. And now there's been talk about tightening the working with children check, but Joshua Dale Brown had no criminal history, so was able to obtain a working with children check. There was a case of a now convicted a man convicted of child abuse material who, while under investigation, was able to give Indigenous lessons at a childcare centre. There have been cases in Victoria and New South Wales of pedophiles appealing to tribunals to get working with children checks. I don't know how they sleep at night, these tribunal members. And there's also been talk about a national register of childcare workers. There's been talk about CCTV in childcare centres. Well, why would you add more cameras there? There's talk. Jacinta Allen has announced that they will be banned personal devices in childcare centres from August. So you're taking the cameras away from the stuff, but adding more cameras in the centre. What if a pedophile is able to hack the CCTV? And now, like I said, I'm not surprised. I didn't want to. Obviously, I didn't want another case like this to happen. Nobody does, but sadly, I'm not surprised. And 7 News this week interviewed a mother whose children were allegedly photographed naked by a childcare worker, yet the investigation is dormant.
Good evening. First to breaking news on Melbourne's daycare abuse scandal. And there are fears tonight alleged predator Joshua Brown came in contact with more children than first thought. It comes as parents shed light on new horror stories, including a mother whose children were photographed naked, but the carer was never charged.
New sex abuse claims from a mother of 2 against a childcare centre.
I was angry, I was disgusted. I just seen red, like that's my child. He's meant to be safe there. He's not meant to be taken advantage of, and that's what they did.
An inner-city childcare centre informed her of an alleged child safety incident.
Their exact words were inappropriate naked photos.
She says the images were found on educators' work devices 3 weeks ago. The centre has stood down the staff involved during internal and Department of Education investigations.
Just waking up over night time, just telling someone, don't touch me, don't touch me.
The family has filed a report with police, but the centre is not listed by authorities as an employer of recently charged suspect Joshua Brown. The mum wants urgent reforms.
Daycares are getting so desperate with educators, they're basically just bringing anyone in. The safest place for my kids is at home.
And more details have emerged about 36-year-old accused rapist Michael Wilson, who police arrested in May and charged with raping a teenage boy and bestiality. Shocked friends told 7 News Wilson's a divorced father of one, a former president of a suburban amateur radio club who's worked as a traffic controller, truck driver, machine operator and at a pizza shop, but not any childcare centres. This is Wilson's rented home in Hoppers Crossing. He moved in around 6 months ago and lived alone, but is now in custody. Neighbours say he was quiet and they had no idea why police were here 7 weeks ago. And it's understood the list of childcare centre dates for accused child sex offender Joshua Brown may be broadened, meaning more potential young victims. Paul Dowsley, 7 News.
Now, Marg up here has said need to shut down childcare centres. There's been, thankfully, some mainstream media commentary about needing to rethink the whole childcare industry. And now, that won't happen with a federal Labor and state government, though the Liberal opposition, both at the state and federal level, they won't question the childcare industry. I very much agreed with former Christian Democrat leader Fred Nile, who called childcare centres day orphanages. And like I said before, vigilance is a two-way street. There's dumping your children with strangers, and I'm sure many of these childcare workers are very caring, but basically, and again, trusting that the government has got everything looked after, and of course, governments they're all obsessed with female workforce participation. Mothers send their children to child care because they think they ought to, but in other countries, there's grandparents who are paid to look after their grandchildren. There could also be the subsidies paid directly to the mothers to stay home with their children. And now Margot Huss, she wrote a article on this latest alleged childcare pedophile making this case. And now Margot had 7 children and didn't dump any of them in childcare for 12 hours a day. There's like some mothers are putting their infants in childcare like pretty much after they've given birth and gone straight back after work. So I'll put that link into the chat. And like I said, no amount of regulation or government's talking tough. The federal education minister, Jason Clare, he's said that when Parliament resumes on July the 22nd, he's going to introduce legislation to strip funding from childcare centres that don't meet minimum standards and have spot checks on childcare centres. No amount of regulation will fix what is the problem with childcare. And I've also previously said that no amount of regulation will also fix aged care and disability care. I mean, in the past, children, they all did their bit and looked after their elderly parents, didn't dump them in a nursing home and forget about them. And also with the NDIS. Before the NDIS, where there's a lot of rorts and abuse, disabled people were cared for. Now, moving on to, what happened in the Melbourne CBD on Friday night bumped the alleged childcare pedophile off the front page. This was the pro-Palestine movement again flexing their muscle. So 20 people who now the account which promotes and also publishes these sorts of protests is the Whistleblowers Activist Community Alliance, WACA, who I think should be listed as a terrorist organization. So 20 people, many of them masked and wearing those kieffas, scarves, entered the Israeli restaurant Mizon in Hardware Avenue, shouted death to the IDF. So it's gone global, that Bob Vylan chant at Glastonbury last week. They scuffled with staff, knocked over tables before police arrived and arrested one man from Footscray. Now, the WACA claims that they took this, what they term direct action, is that the owner of this restaurant, Israeli chef Shahar Segal, until recently was a spokesman for the Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, which they claim is complicit in the genocide in Gaza by getting all the Palestinians into an area, getting ready for aid, like it's a honeypot trap, and then rockets and missiles kill them all. So Gaza Humanitarian Foundation, it's jointly organized by Israel and the United States. Again, I don't know what the truth of this is. There's extremists on both sides. Then on the same night, the East Melbourne synagogue front door was set alight with 20 people inside. Now, unlike the firebombing of the Adass synagogue in Melbourne at the end of last year, which destroyed the whole centre, this just damaged the front door. So police have already arrested a suspect. So his name is Angelo Loras, which I searched up the name and apparently has a Spanish origin. Now, he is actually from New South Wales, 34-year-old from Toonangabi, which is in Western Sydney. Then on the same night, it was actually early Saturday morning in Greensborough, there were 3 cars set alight and the front of Lovett Technologies was vandalized. So it is a weapons company which apparently has links to Israel that's been previously targeted by these pro-Palestine protesters in the past. This has been these blockades and, of course, at the very extreme end, arson and vandalism have been happening against various people. The pro-Palestine movement has accused of being complicit in genocide. Josh Burns, the Jewish Labour MP for McNamara, his office was firebombed. But this goes back a decade. So I remember when the BDS boycotts divestment sanctions movement, they didn't call themselves the BDSM, targeted Max Brenner Chocolate Cafe because apparently provides ration kits to the IDF. Everything's connected to the IDF these days. Now, this has led to all of the Melbourne media talking about the the anti-Semitism crisis. There's been many Jewish community leaders, including our old friend Davira Abramovich, saying that this is they're not just an attack on us Jews, but all Australians. Now, in my opinion, what occurred on Friday night is a consequence of the Allen Labor government, Victoria Police, and seems nothing's changed under new Chief Commissioner Mike Bush, of letting Antifa socialist thugs run rampant. I mean, we see them engage in violence that let women speak. They've been doing it ever since the United Patriots Front started rallies. Now, Jacinta Allen, under pressure, it seems, from the News Corporation and the Liberal opposition, even though the anti-Semitism crisis didn't do anything to help the Liberals in the election campaign. They only won 1 in 4 predominantly Jewish electorates in the federal election. So she's announced a anti-hate task force and a social cohesion pledge.
And if you consider, just as the fire came to the front door here of this shul, but it was stopped, so too must we put a stop to hate, put a stop to anti-Semitism. Not only does it have no place here in Melbourne and Victoria, it has no place anywhere, which is why, alongside pledging my support and my government's support, practical support to the community here, providing support for mental health services, be guided by the community what more they need in responding to this hateful incident on Friday evening. So too we spoke about the future, about how hate needs to stop, how the anti-hate task force will be convened, working with Victoria Police, working with the Jewish community, working with all Victorians, how we put a stop to this hateful behaviour and recognise that hate has no place here in our state. And I say this, I'll continue to stand with the strong, proud Jewish community here in Victoria every single day. Every single day. They are a big and important part of our community. They demand our support at this most difficult time. They demand our action, which is why, alongside strengthening laws, the response of Victoria Police, we will continue to work to build a stronger place where everyone can be who they are, practice their faith, safe, free from hate. Thank you. But we also know that we need to do more, which is why we've asked George Lakakis to review our multicultural settings here in this state. We expect to receive that review in the coming weeks. And also, a central part of that work is advice on how we can introduce a social cohesion pledge, because we are seeing too much hate, anti-Semitism, but hatred against other groups. We need to crack down on this, but we need to also do it in a way that understands that we have such a strength in our multicultural, multi-faith society here in Victoria.
When it comes to a national approach to this, we think it's very important that everybody is involved across all governments. And the reason for that is anti-Semitic reports have gone up 316% here across the country. That is obviously a lot here in Victoria, but it needs a national approach to fix this problem. But the state still can do things to fix the issues here in Victoria now. We are on the headlines around the world for a reason, because here in Victoria, that hate speech and the hate crime has gone too far. They are commenting on media channels all around the world.
Yes, Benjamin Netanyahu, the Israeli Prime Minister, they demanded action against the anti-Semitic acts on the weekend. You heard Jacinta Allen there saying that she's asked for a review. She's a real fan of reviews, and she's also got 2 reviews going on into the childcare sector. So there's a urgent review, and then there's going to be another review led by the former Premier of South Australia, Jay Weatherall, who, well, there was a pedophile who run rampant in the South Australian care system under his premiership. and also be led by Pamela White, who is part of the Victorian Public Service, working in child protection. So this short and sharp review will focus on reform work occurring nationally. So that's one of two reviews, I believe. And of course, now she's got this review into a multicultural, protecting multicultural community. She just passed the expanded anti-vilification laws, which I'm surprised she didn't wedge the Victorian Liberal Party, who voted against them in the Parliament. They surprisingly did the right thing, but every time there is an act of anti-Semitic vandalism, their values seem to go out the window, and then they demand a strengthen hate speech laws, while the Dutton opposition did in the beginning of this year. Now, Jacinta Allen, last week, she also what was presented to her was the findings of the Yurok Justice Commission. Now, this was set up by her predecessor, Dan Andrews, 5 years ago. So it took them 5 years for this commission. And so it had over 100 recommendations, but it claims that there was a decimation of First Peoples population in Victoria as the result of a coordinated plan of different actions aimed at the destruction of the essential foundation of the life of the national groups. This was genocide. So to rectify this, because it says that there's intergenerational trauma, these wrongs of the past are still present today. Compensation should be offered, and by returning land, monetary compensation, tax-free status on various things, and recognizing First Peoples' rights to share in natural resource revenue, and the Indigenous groups should be treated as separate nations. And Jacinta Allen wants to make the Victoria's First Peoples Assembly permanent, have it as a voice to Parliament, even though Victorians voted against the voice to the federal Parliament and the Constitution, 55-45 at the 2023 referendum. She claims this is different because it's not in the Constitution, and also wants to pursue a treaty. Now, it would be, well, send the state broke, and it would be political suicide for her to adopt all of these recommendations. I mean, she said she's going to adopt all the recommendations from the Weatherall review into the childcare sector, even though it hasn't even started yet. But the thing is, she's now got herself ahead in the polls. So this would be a great way to make her lead slip into the polls. There were two polls published today. There was the news poll in the Australian that says the Allen Labor government is back ahead, 53-47 two-party preferred. And there's the Redbridge poll in the Herald Sun, which says the Labor Party are 51.5, 48.5 two-party preferred ahead. So that would deliver a fourth term to the Labor Party here in Victoria, and pretty much cement a one-party state. And now this is despite Jacinta Allen being insanely unpopular. She's got a -31 approval rating. And Brad Batten is actually preferred premier by 5 points. But the Victorian Liberal Party as well, they're basically a soap opera. So Brad Batten and the rest of the Administrative Committee is being sued by another administrative committee member over the 1.5 million paid to loaned to John Prosciutto to pay Moira Deeming's legal fees. So the Liberal Party at the state level here in Victoria, and at the federal level, is its own worst enemy and an asset to the Labor Party. Now, following Sushan Lay's speech to the National Press Club last week, there's all this talk of quotas for women in the Liberal Party, while Anthony Albanese is just doing what he wants. I mean, he's now not bothering to pursue a face-to-face meeting with Donald Trump until summit season at year's end. So we've got the Trump administration reviewing the AUKUS submarine deal. I wonder if Albo has been in secret negotiations with Emmanuel Macron to revive the French submarine deal. Anthony Albanese now seems apathetic about the lobbying. Well, it doesn't seem like he's lobbying to get the reciprocal tariffs to be removed on Australia. The 90-day pause that Donald Trump announced on reciprocal tariffs ends July the 9th. Although Anthony Albanese is going to be visiting China to visit President Xi. He's taking a whole bunch of business people with him. And now the Safety Commissioner, she, of course, addressed the National Press Club the day before, Sushan Lay. She has had another setback with Billboard Chris winning in the Administrative Review Tribunal against her takedown notice against his post against Teddy Cook, who works for the AIDS Council of New South Wales, a trans man. So this was a link to a Daily Mail article which reveals that Teddy Cook is into bondage, BDSM, and bestiality. So this is now back on X. So Billboard Chris wrote, "This woman, yes, she is a woman, is part of a panel of 20 experts hired by the WHO to draft their policy on caring for trans people. People who belong in psychiatric wards are writing the guidelines for people who belong in psychiatric wards." So the Administrative Appeal Tribunal, it's actually a body set up by the Albanese government. And so Damien O'Donovan, he rescinded the takedown order and ruled that Billboard Chris acted in accordance with his conviction, wasn't cyberbullying or harassing Teddy Cook, though the Safety Commissioner, Shiev, of course, is going to be striking back. So she announced at the National Press Club NPC that YouTube would be included in the social media ban for under 16s. Now, age verification, it looks like it could be needed to Google search. So the government will know your Google history. So basically, it's going to be that to access any form of interactive, have any interactive sort of experience online, whether in a search engine or YouTube, will require a digital ID. Now, it was passed at the end of last year, bipartisan, the social media ban for under 16s, and working out the age assurance details later. So we don't know what they're originally going to decide upon. Julian Mangrant said there's just age assurance trials. Cat B says opposition is not good. But how can anyone vote Labor? Again, shows the mentality and morality of Victoria years and years. Well, Gen Y and Z, they are massively pro-Labor and pro-Green, as of course are a lot of migrant group. Now let's turn over to the United States, with, of course, all the talk being about. Well, it's not actually the Trump administration that is opening Alligator Alcaraz in Florida. It is Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, it's not actually going to have alligators on patrol, but this migrant detention facility, which is literally called Alligator Alcaraz, it's in Florida's Everglades, which there is a lot of alligators there. Florida is a bit like North Queensland, which of course has the crocodiles. I don't think it's ever been proposed to have a crocodile patrolled detention facilities in North Queensland. So it is initially going to be funded by the Florida taxpayers, though is wanting to be reimbursed eventually from FEMA and also the Department of Homeland Security. And in Donald Trump's big, beautiful bill, ICE funding, immigration and customs enforcement has been expanded to $75 billion. Though, of course, Elon Musk is not happy with the big, beautiful bill because it still expands the debt, doesn't cut it. So he has founded the American Party, which is going to go nowhere. And now another jury verdict was reached in New York on a big trial, and this was regarding Sean Diddy Combs, and the jury in that case ruled that decided Diddy didn't do it. So he was found not guilty on the most serious charges of racketeering, conspiracy, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion, but was found guilty of transportation to engage in prostitution, which he's still remanded in custody, but he could walk because prostitution is illegal in most of the United States, apart from Las Vegas. So if he did prostitution in Australia, that wouldn't be a crime, though it could be prostitution could become legal in New York City if the Democrat nominee Zoran Mamdi is elected. He favors legalizing prostitution, and he also, even though he's Indian, wrote down on his college application that he was black. Now, also, we had, speaking of accused sex traffickers, we have a breaking news from the Department of Justice and FBI that said Epstein killed himself, and there's no evidence that he had a client list. So the FBI said that they have reviewed all of the hard drives and said that there was no co-conspirators. He didn't traffic to nobody. And so there we have it. Case closed. Move along. Nothing to see here. So Elon Musk is a filthy on this, and the DOJ has released 11 hours of straight footage from outside of Epstein's cell as evidence he committed suicide. But weren't we told that the tapes were wiped? So where did this footage come from? So again, this is, I guess it could be true that he committed suicide with bed sheets that are impossible to commit suicide with. And remember, he had one suicide attempt and he was placed on suicide watch, but still, he still was able to commit suicide. Now, also, Donald Trump's attention has turned to domestic matters, though the United States obviously is playing a role in ceasefire negotiations between Israel and Hamas. It would be good if there was a ceasefire, because it would mean there'd be hopefully less protests here in Melbourne, and then we'd have another week of anti-Semitism crisis headlines. Over to the UK now, and Reform UK have lost another MP, James McMurdoch, who he'd already got a criminal conviction for bashing a former partner. Now he has, well, it's called in the British politics, he's requested the party whip be suspended because it was revealed in the Times newspaper that he allegedly fraudulently obtained COVID loans for his businesses that didn't do anything. And the UK was one of the worst for the COVID era rorts and corruption of the Johnson Tory government under the Health Secretary Matt Hancock. There was so much corruption with the tender for their VIP lane PPE contracts, so much waste during COVID. And this is why, well, Keir Starmer, he tried to rein in the budget through welfare reform, but there was a backbench revolt. So he and his Chancellor Rachel Reeves are now contemplating further tax increases, even though they promised no new taxes. It's 1 year since the election of the Starmer Labor government, July the 4th, which of course is the same day as the United States Independence Day. And now ex-Reform MP Rupert Lowe, he has founded, it's not a political party, it's a group called Restore Britain. And then you have former Deputy Reform leader Ben Habib, founding Advance UK. I don't know if it's related to Advance Australia. Also, it seems to finish off Pride Month, the former head of Surrey Pride, Steve Ireland, has been jailed for allegedly. He's been jailed. He's been convicted of attempting to have sex with a 12-year-old boy. So Stephen Ireland, 40, was sentenced to 24 years in prison with a further 6 on extended license. That's parole, found guilty of the rape of a child under 13. So he actually raped him. 3 counts of causing a child under 13 to engage in sexual activity, and the sexual assault of a child under 13 as well. Surrey Pride have basically said, oh, look, he wasn't that significant. Now, it's clear whether it's a LGBT youth organization or it's a childcare center, pedophiles and groomers, they're going to be attracted to professions which give them access to children. I mean, in the past, it was the pedophile priests, the scoutmasters, and the swim coaches. So this is certainly something that forever there needs to be vigilance over predators. And there is going to be a rally here in Melbourne, Stand Up for Our Children, organised by Leave Our Kids Alone, which is headed by Craig Cole. It's going to be in Flagstaff Gardens on Saturday, the 2nd of August at 12 p.m. So they come together and shine the spotlight on the depraved situation our children are being subjected to in daycare centres, state care facilities, child trafficking networks that operate within the system, school curriculum saturated with highly inappropriate sexual content. I don't know if there will be an Antifa socialist counter-protesters. Or will they not want think about the optics of them protesting an anti-pedophile rally? I think it actually occurred in Ireland back in 2020. There was an anti-pedophile rally which Antifa counter-protesters. Now that brings me to the end of Tim's news explosion for another week. Now I will be back on Reality Check Radio tomorrow morning with another Wilms report on Breakfast with Paul Brennan. So I will put the link in the show notes page. And now I will let you know when the next Wilms report is, featured interview program. Sorry, Wilms Front interview program. I know I haven't had fun for a while. I hopefully will get somebody locked in soon. Now, there won't be a report from Tiger Mouth Richard Rollsoncroft for a little while because he's been in hospital and has had surgery. So he is rightfully taking a number of weeks for recovery. And Richard is just in his early 50s. We just had Michael Gray Griffith. He is his co-host in the No Goat Show, also having extended stay in hospital with surgery. So it's a bit scary, these men in their 50s being in a hospital and having to have surgery. Obviously, with me, it was just a day procedure with my foot varicose veins. I've made a full recovery now, so I'm back on my feet now. Though, when I come to think of it, I was definitely the youngest person in my ward. I'm not sure if you saw the by Norman Swan in of course the ABC's chief doomer when it came to COVID. Did anyone see well, it's actually on Four Corners as we speak tonight. Dr. Norman Swan reveals cancer surge in younger Australians. So I think I'll be watching that shortly after I end this stream. Now, of course, I cannot bring you Tim's News Explosion without your support. So please consider taking out a premium membership on the unshackled.net/membership, which is where all our articles are still published. So bronze $5 per month, $50 per year, silver $10 per month, $100 per year, gold $25 per month, $250 per year, or platinum $50 per month, $500 per year. Or you can take out a premium, a subscription over on Substack. So monthly $5 per month, annual $50 per year, or be a founding member for $500 per year, or sign up for free, because that's where I send out email alerts now about Unshackled Productions, new articles. Our Unshackled Productions archive is now at Substack. Thank you so much all for watching tonight. Please stay safe, stay sane, stay free, and certainly keep your loved ones safe. Given the news of the past week, it's such a tragedy that it's been just a sick, twisted, evil week, particularly here in our home, my home, Victoria. Good night, everybody.
Tim's News Explosion. 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 Tim's News Explosion.